we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And we have a lot of news, so we're going to talk fast.
We don't have to talk that fast.
Okay. Well, first of all, an Ohio judge has ordered state officials to recognize the marriage of a Cincinnati male couple who we showed you last week who flew to Maryland to marry because one of the men has ALS.
I don't know if he's going to get away with that. There are a lot of ins and outs to this. We'll discuss them. Meanwhile, a gay couple in Virginia has sued for the right to marry.
And John Boehner says House Republicans will no longer defend the Defense of Marriage Act in court.
Again, I'll believe it when I see it. Right-wingers tried to stop, are continuing to try to stop same-sex marriages in California, and from being to stop same-sex couples from being recognized by immigration authorities. But they're getting beaten back for the moment too.
Not giving up. We'll give you more news about the tax consequences of same-sex marriage, going back 3 years in some cases.
We have discussed out gay boxer Emil Griffith on this show. He died this week at age 75.
2 gay hookup murders reported this week, one in Minnesota and the other in Austin, Texas.
And a trans panic murder in North Philadelphia.
The Monroe, New York County Executive is determined that the rainbow flag will not fly from government buildings.
And then one of the funniest things we've ever seen,
we'll show you.
A local news report on how a satanic cult with a sense of humor from New York went to Mississippi to perform a little rite on the grave of the mother of Fred Phelps, turning her into a lesbian in the afterlife.
A new study shows a high degree of efficacy for the HPV vaccine in stopping oral cancers and recommends it for boys as well as girls.
Absolutely. Mexico has its first out gay mayor.
The House of Lords in the United Kingdom is seeking a pardon for the famous codebreaker Alan Turing, who died in the 50s.
Ireland has taken up transgender rights in Parliament.
Out-gay statistics genius Nate Silver is moving from the New York Times to ESPN.
Harrison Ford steps in the controversy over the author of Ender's Game.
And I'm going to review a little play down in the Village called Handbook for an American Revolutionary. Well, this Ohio judge sounds like a revolutionary, doesn't he?
Well, what a great guy. We showed you the very, very touching and revolutionary story last week of John and Jim from Ohio.
Yep.
John has ALS. They've been together for many years, and with this diagnosis and his deteriorating physical condition, they got themselves a private plane financed by donations sent in by sympathetic supporters on Facebook and flew to Baltimore, Maryland, where the aunt of one of them, who had gotten herself legalized to perform a marriage, married them in the plane on the tarmac at the Baltimore airport, and then they flew back to Cincinnati.
Right.
So this was, last week was just a touching story of 2 guys who wanted to be able to have their marriage legal.
They want their rights.
Well, we had no idea what revolutionaries they were.
They're suing, and a federal judge has ordered state officials to recognize the marriage because John Arthur could be dead soon. And he ordered the registrar of death certificates not to accept one that does not record John as married and James as surviving spouse.
Now, what the judge has said, clearly he moved quickly in this case because he's sympathetic to their plight. But this was a legal decision that said, in light of the Supreme Court decision in the Windsor case and the Prop 8 case, and the way they wrote those decisions, it is a violation of equal protection for Ohio not to treat equally a legal same-sex marriage as an opposite-sex legal marriage. And what has been pointed out in this suit is that Ohio recognizes other marriages performed elsewhere that would not be legal if performed in Ohio. Marriages of first cousins, marriages of minors.
Right. Well, that's why New York was doing it. But, of course, Ohio has a constitutional amendment against this.
But this federal judge said that state constitutional amendment
is unconstitutional under the federal constitution.
I have been saying for years.
There we go. If they only had listened to you.
Yeah, but here's the problem. Everyone is saying, oh, you know, it really is just about this couple, and it's because of their particular situation, and how dare the right wing try to appeal this? Well, you don't get it if that's what you think. Because here's the deal. The right wing knows perfectly well that this, if you give them an inch, they will take the entire country. And
the gays.
Anybody in any situation. But the deal is that if this decision is allowed to stand, if their marriage must be recognized by Ohio, that opens the door for everybody.
Well, who's going to defend it? I mean, John Boehner says House Republicans will no longer defend the Defense of Marriage Act.
Here's who will defend it. Mike DeWine, the right-wing Attorney General of Ohio, who has already announced his intention to appeal this decision. And what's fun is that his Democratic opponent in the upcoming election for Attorney General is now using this to rake him over the coals and say, how dare you, this should be unconstitutional, and you're violating equal protection, and you don't believe in the fairness of the laws. So this is becoming a big election issue. So these guys are great. They're great to go to these lengths to do this. They're great to then turn around and turn this into a legal case that will benefit everybody. And this is the way it's going everywhere. We're about to go on to other states and what's happening. But this is a particularly excellent example of what can happen.
Well, let's give some of the other examples of how the right wing is digging in. In San Diego, the clerk there, we have a picture of him. His name is Ernest Dronberg. There, he has filed. He filed last Friday for a stay to stop the issuance of marriage licenses. And he's working with the quote-unquote Freedom of Conscience Defense Fund, saying that the Perry decision, which is the federal decision at the district level, is not binding on them. And the Attorney General, Kamala Harris, said there's no new arguments in this, forget it. The California Supreme Court issued an order refusing to stop the marriages there, but they're digging in.
19 or 20 other clerks from around California have also filed asking to not have to perform same-sex marriages, but as the Attorney General said, you're filing in the wrong court. You're filing in the state court. This was a federal decision. The federal decision will always trump the state decision, so they're not even going to hear you, let alone decide in your favor. But you're right. The fight continues. The right wing is not going away quietly. They are kicking and screaming and pulling out their hair to try to change this.
Well, I mean, they gave space in the New York Times op-ed page to Alberto Gonzalez and David Strange, who's an immigration lawyer and a Texas Tech professor, saying, hey, Janet Napolitano just said give green cards to all the legally married same-sex foreign-born partners, and hey, the way that law is written is for spouses who are of the opposite sex, and you can't just change this. This is statutory. Congress did not intend this. You have to go through statute by statute, but most people aren't taking this too seriously, except the New York Times, by giving them the space.
I was horrified that they printed that. It's intellectually bankrupt.
Yeah.
It's completely wrong.
It's a lie, it's a sham, and it won't work.
Exactly right. And we knew that about Alberto Gonzalez when he was working for George Bush, and he has not changed
and
his
defending
stripes.
torture.
Yeah. Now, Pennsylvania is getting interesting because in a suburb of Philadelphia, Montgomery County, the local officials there decided they were going to go rogue on this, and that they would issue marriage licenses and perform marriages for same-sex couples. They decided on their own that...
Call that going rogue? You don't call it upholding the Constitution?
Well, you know what I mean.
Yes. It's very much like what the mayor of San Francisco did, Gavin Newsom.
Yeah.
And he got stopped.
First, a lesbian couple thought about applying for a marriage license, but the local ACLU guy evidently talked them out of it on the grounds that this could screw up the plan, because as we said a couple of weeks ago when James Essex of the National ACLU was here, They have gone to court with about a dozen couples of all of various arguments and situations to argue that Pennsylvania as a whole should legalize same-sex marriage. And so for these couples to sort of crop up and do it on their own messes with the plan. But 2 other lesbian couples went ahead and got marriage licenses in Montgomery County, and at least one of them have gone ahead and gotten married.
Yep.
And in New Mexico, where there is also a suit filed, the Attorney General, Gary King, is following the lead of the Philadelphia Attorney General and
Pennsylvania.
Yes, what did I say?
Philadelphia.
Oh.
Maybe she is from Philadelphia.
Well, but you're right, it's Pennsylvania as a whole, and Kamala Harris in California, for that matter. He has announced, Gary King, that he will not fight the marriage suit, that he believes this is a question of equal protection. But he did file a brief saying that he thinks the case should not be all the way at the highest court in New Mexico yet, that it should start at a court of lower jurisdiction.
Now in Virginia, where a new poll says support for same-sex marriage is at 50% to 43% opposed, which is bad news for Ken Cuccinelli, who's running for governor there on a very right-wing platform.
Some people call him Cuccinelli.
Well, that's what he is. But the ACLU is planning a lawsuit, but one has already been filed by a couple from Norfolk in the Eastern District of Virginia. Ken Cuccinelli is yet to respond. He has 20 days to respond. These couples been together for 25 years. Tony London, 54, and Timothy Bostic, 48. They decided against marrying in another state. They want to marry in the Commonwealth.
Well, that is the decision of many people, and that's why we have activists all over the country doing this stuff. In Arkansas, there's a marriage case there. People filed in Arkansas a few weeks ago. I think
Why are we
told you
laughing?
about that.
Come on, that's part of the country.
What? No, what
We
I'm
have a lot of
laughing
viewers
at,
there.
Here's why I'm laughing, because a federal judge where this case was filed
Leon
in federal
Holmes.
court has recused himself on this case.
He's a close personal friend and has a professional relationship with leaders of the campaign for Amendment 83, which bans it, including Jerry Cox, who's the head of the Arkansas Family Council. He's also written that conception from rape is as rare as snowfall in Miami.
That's the judge, not the
Yes,
lobbyist.
that's the judge.
Yeah.
And so the judge taking over is Christine Baker, who's a Democrat.
Yeah, a lot more likely. But I love the fact that a right-wing judge would recuse himself in one of these cases. That doesn't happen very often.
I want to talk about some tax issues.
You can if you wish.
Well, first of all, the IRS has promised to move swiftly. It's, they're saying it's in terms of recognizing same-sex marriages for tax purposes. It's easy if you're in a state where it's recognized.
Well, it's no harder in non-recognition states than it was for people in recognition states when it wasn't recognized by the federal government.
But they're working on it.
Yes.
And unless the
Sort of a flip.
Unless the IRS exempts from back taxes, it's possible that there could be penalties for people also who have been married illegally, but there also could be money that they're going to get that they weren't going to get. For those who could benefit, you can go back 3 years on your tax returns.
Right.
Now, New York says it will pay same-sex spouses refunds for estate taxes that they were forced to pay because federal law didn't recognize the same-sex marriage. You can file for the years in which the statute of limitations is still open, or if you filed a protective claim, as many people did, in anticipation of the Edie Windsor decision.
Yes. I'm fascinated that they will go back on it. Is that on the theory that if the Defense of Marriage Act Section 3 is unconstitutional, it should never have been in effect, and therefore you can go back as far as the statute lets you to collect?
If Edie can collect, you can collect.
Interesting. And the Federal Election Commission has announced that it will let same-sex couples donate to political candidates as spouses. That was a a case filed, I think, by Republican gays in Massachusetts, or by the log cabin Republicans nationally.
The Justice Department is opposing a request of gay veterans in the Massachusetts DOMA case, their spouse's judgment in their favor as they challenge the benefit statutes. They're citing procedural grounds on this. They're saying that no plaintiff has filed for the benefits and the court has no jurisdiction over veterans' benefits. So it sounds like a technicality, but...
Well, as with the New Mexico Attorney General, there are this stuff, as you are hearing, is so complicated that people are just trying to do it in the right way or not. But I think John Aravosis, who we sometimes agree with and sometimes don't, but I think he summed it up pretty appropriately when he noted, and this isn't something others haven't noticed too, that when the Supreme Court made its decisions, even though it said we're not going to legalize marriage for the whole country.
Antonin Scalia said, yes, you are.
Well, and that's what Aravosis says. All you have to do is look what's happened in the last few weeks in the wake of this decision, and already it is just busting out all over because the theory promulgated by Kennedy in deciding the DOMA case was so broad and so fundamental that it has become the basis for now every one of these cases.
Are we wrong to get their hopes up out there?
I don't think so.
Not at all.
I think what he's saying is we've won, and we will win, and we'll keep winning.
The Air Force said we won under the Windsor decision. Benefits may extend to same-sex spouses and eligible family members, including health insurance, dental, vision, long-term care insurance, surviving annuities, reimbursement of medical expenses if enrolled in a flexible spending account. If married before June 26th, you have until August 26th to enroll, and after that you got 60 days after you get married for all you Air Force folks.
And you mentioned this, the U.S. House of Representatives, in the person of John Boehner, did formally tell the Supreme Court, I guess, that it would stop defending DOMA Section 3 in other allied cases.
Well, they're down to 40 co-sponsors on the federal constitutional amendment against same-sex marriage. People are just like giving up on it.
In the House.
In the House.
Out of the 200 plus they would need. And little guerrilla actions taking place too, where the courts are not taking care of this. San Francisco activists are going into bookstores and libraries and pasting over the definition of marriage in dictionaries and changing it to make it two consenting adults or whatever instead of men and women.
But defacing books.
Supplementing, correcting, updating.
Put a little addendum slip in. Well, maybe in that context, we should talk about... I don't know how revolutionary this is, but we told you last week about Ed Murray, the out-gay member of the state of Washington legislature who's running for mayor of Seattle and is considered a top contender. And he's put out a campaign ad where he talks about his support for marriage, and he walks along with his husband. It's, I mean, we've seen couples before, but it's nice. Cute.
My parents were inspired by President Kennedy. Our family believed that we could make a difference. When I realized I was gay, I thought I would never have that chance. But Seattle's a special place. I've represented our city in the state legislature for 18 years. I've helped fund transit, protect our environment, improve education, and I wrote our marriage equality law. Seattle can do better. Join me, and we will live up to our progressive values together.
Paid for by Ed Murray for mayor.
That's gaining national attention.
In terms of sound, we were getting something is getting in there from someplace else, but we hope that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, but that was Ed Murray, candidate for mayor of Seattle, with his husband.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Other news. Well, I guess people expect us to talk about Anthony Weiner.
Sex in the City. Yeah, it has to be read to be believed. It's nothing I haven't read before. But I mean, look, the issue with Anthony Weiner, who everybody knows resigned from Congress because he was caught in a sexting scandal, now is running for mayor, and said that other stuff might come out. But what's happened, and he said some of it happened after he resigned from Congress. Well,
that's what he said yesterday.
When you read about the stuff that he did, I mean, some people say it's just sex. We have an investment in not condemning him, and his wife forgives him. Why shouldn't everybody else? But he's a piece of work.
It's not about sex. It's about the fact that he's got a real problem, and he's not very honest about it.
Right.
And the idea of giving this guy the power of being the mayor of New York City, and he's someone I used to like, is really horrifying. But in addition to Anthony Weiner himself being horrifying, there's a little footnote to this, which is Chris Matthews on MSNBC describing this story as this latest part of it broke this week. And there he was sitting on the air saying, what's wrong with this guy? Why can't he be like his role model, Ed Koch? Ed Koch kept his private life private.
Whoa, was Ed Koch gay?
Ed Koch, first of all, he walked around with this beard. Bess Meyer said he was a complete liar.
I wrote the book on Ed Koch.
I'm just explaining to our audience via you. And the idea that Chris Matthews should hold up Ed Koch as a paragon of virtue, and that being gay should be equated with what Anthony Weiner is doing, is just despicable.
Right. And we have other scandals going on in New York. The first out bisexual New York State Assembly member, Micah Kellner, a good guy, I like him. But then I read that he has been involved in multiple harassment or inappropriate things with women staffers, and he's now running for city council. And we could go on and on about the mayor of San Diego. And then there's Elliot Spitzer, again trying,
I don't think he's going to benefit from this Anthony Weiner stuff.
Running for state controller, but I hope.
I think Chris Quinn may benefit from this Anthony Weiner stuff.
I hope that. Yeah, how about that? The lesbian will benefit from other people's scandals.
Looking like a paragon of virtue and a woman compared to these creepy
What's
men.
really scandalous, however, is the Attorney General of Virginia, who we mentioned, Kent Cuccinelli, who calls homosexuality in a debate a personal challenge. Well, tell us more, Ken.
Yeah.
That's harmful to society and is against nature. Now, his Democratic opponent is Terry McAuliffe, who said that Ken's comments could hurt Virginia's ability to attract business.
Well, Ken wants to reinstate the sodomy law.
He does. It was ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in 2003.
And he wants it back.
He's only losing by 43 to 39% to McAuliffe.
I'm surprised he's losing at all. He's an elected Attorney General of Virginia. He's been very popular there. Well, he's also in trouble because he's been the beneficiary of this donor who the governor may have to resign over because he gave him a lot of money. But Cuccinelli is accusing Terry McAuliffe of supporting sexual predators. It's really hideous and ugly.
With the demise of OutServe and SLDN, there's a new group called SPARTA, Service Members, Partners, and Allies for Respect and Tolerance for All. Its starting leadership team consists mostly of veterans.
Yes,
and it's still hard for a lot of people to be out in the military.
Oh yeah,
despite our advances.
There are remaining issues about benefits and about transgender and transsexual members serving, and the people who are starting SPARTA are the people who have sort of given up on OutServe SLDN being able to resurrect itself, and they've just said, the heck with it, we're going to go start our own organization.
Yeah.
I think we should get to my favorite story of the week, which comes from Meridian, Mississippi.
Okay.
We'd been reading about this, and then we came across a local news report that was just so charming we couldn't resist it. Here's the basic story. According to people at Meridian, Mississippi, something called the Satanic Temple in New York. Have you ever heard of them?
I don't know them.
They went to Mississippi to the grave of the mother of Fred Phelps because they're so sick of Fred Phelps in the Westboro Baptist Church going to all these funerals.
Mother of Fred Phelps Jr., by the way, who's the one we know as the leader of the cult.
Okay, well, they go and they perform some ritual which they call a pink mass on her grave, which will make her a lesbian in heaven.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, it's like the Mormons who convert the Jews to Mormonism after they're dead. So all of this is a big, I think, cute joke, but the people of Meridian, Mississippi are taking it a little seriously, and here is the local news report.
Trespassing at a local cemetery. Tonight, the other violations police say were committed. Good evening to you at 6 o'clock. I'm Chip Scarborough. Well, the owner of a Meridian cemetery has already said he plans to pursue charges against members of New York's Satanic Temple, and now police are investigating the unusual ritual that was performed there and preparing to make arrests. Candace Barnett has more on where the investigation stands now.
We brought you the story of the Satanic Temple's trip to a Meridian cemetery that's gaining national attention. Now the cemetery owner is looking to press charges, and the police are preparing to make an arrest.
Meridian Police have reached out and spoken to Mr. Arlinghouse of Magnolia Cemetery. We are in the process now of constructing affidavits and warrants against these individuals, and we will have them arrested as soon as we can.
A group from New York's Satanic Temple made the trip to Meridian to protest the Westboro Baptist Church. You can see from pictures on their website there they performed a ritual they call Pink Mass on the grave of Katherine Johnston, the mother of Westboro founder Fred Phelps Jr. The ceremony involved two same-sex couples kissing over her grave. They then declared Katherine Johnston a lesbian in the afterlife.
It is an unusual crime that we haven't come across, to my knowledge, in a while. Not only does it violate a state and city ordinance, but it also violates the moral decency of a human being.
The Satanic Temple claims their actions are instead meant to convey a message of love in the face of hate, celebrating gay love, since the Westboro Baptist Church has become famous for its intolerance of homosexuals. The Satanic Temple encourages others to hold their own pink masses in the cemetery, but the owner says he'll be on the lookout.
They are not welcome to perform disrespectful ceremonies. I don't want to give them overly too much attention, because that's really what they're trying to see.
And the Satanic Temple admits attention is what they're after. They hope their actions will draw attention to the organization's efforts to raise money to participate in New York City's Adopt a Highway program.
We will keep the highway clear of litter and debris. We ask for your help in contributing to the Satanic Temple's efforts.
Captain Harper says the MPD has plenty of evidence to arrest these individuals. They'll be looking at charges for trespassing, indecent exposure, and malicious mischief at a minimum. Candace Barnett, News Center 11.
Now,
But who is going to, is Fred Phelps Jr. going to come there and perform a ceremony to get his mother back on the straight and narrow?
I want you to notice that at that Meridian, Mississippi TV station, this was the top story.
Okay. Hey, what's been the top story in New York? Sexting by Anthony Weiner.
When I said it to Andy, he said, "This looks like a Saturday Night Live skit."
It's true.
I had to agree.
It's true. Well, we got some good news. In Chicago, they've got their first out lesbian on the city council. Her name is Deb Mell.
Yes,
she's an Illinois state representative. She succeeds her father. She gets appointed to the position because her daddy died, I guess, by Rahm Emanuel.
Well, they had a
process.
They have an advisory committee that vets candidates and recommends.
Oh, we have an
them.
advisory committee in most places. It's called a vote.
Well, Deb Mell is
But it's only advisory.
Political royalty in Illinois. This is a long...
Oh, and we left the right-wing religious stuff because at the Exodus International, another leader, Randy Thomas, has apologized to you and me and Ann and everybody for his bragging on the gay community.
Well, kind of. Not apologizing is the Republican County Executive of Monroe County, New York, which is Rochester, who is...
Rochester's a liberal city, but this is the county government.
Yeah. refusing to fly the rainbow flag. The Democrats in the county legislature fly the flag, but the Republicans got the sheriff to take it down.
Well, she's saying it. They're saying it's our legislature. You don't run us. You're not the head of the legislature. You got nothing to do with the legislature.
And in Porterville, California, the city council voted to rescind the Pride Month proclamation that the mayor there had issued there on the grounds that it violated religion.
Oh, and gay people should not get special consideration. Now
well, this council had voted to support Prop 8 when it was up for a vote.
And
there were protests.
3 were arrested.
Yeah, so we're fighting back there. HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, has hired a new chief operating officer and chief of staff, Anna Ma, who was the chief of staff at the U.S. Labor Department. She's from Arizona. She is a Latina and Asian American. She's out lesbian, has a fiance. She's worked in electoral politics. She's worked for members of Congress. She's worked in Democratic administrations. And so she is going to be the new big cheese at HRC with Chad Griffin. Should be interesting.
In New Jersey, the case against Jonah, the Jewish ex-gay group, is underway. They're charged with consumer fraud for trying to convert people. 4 men and 2 of their parents said deceptive claims were made, and they're being defended by the Freedom of Conscience Defense Fund, the other side, I'm saying.
Yeah.
They're defending the group.
The Bradley Manning Support Network is running a big full-page ad in the New York Times, but gay activists noted that it made no reference to the fact that he's gay or transgender. There's some confusion about that.
Yep.
Because he hasn't been able to talk publicly for a long time. But there was a famous photograph of him holding up a big sign of sort of rainbow equality. And so the LGBT activists got busy on this, and the full-page ad was changed to include a reference to him as openly gay service member Bradley Manning.
Well, in that case, his former supervisor, Serlene Showman, testified that Manning once said to him that the flag meant nothing to him, something that had never been reported before in the case. She said it was in reference to him not being able to do push-ups. She called him a faggot also. She said he was faggoty, and she said that was in relationship not being able to do push-ups, not being gay. She also did not try to have him removed under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So she's testifying against him, and it's bad.
Well, they seem to be in the phase where the judge is making some decisions about
aiding the enemy is the big thing there.
Yes.
Punishable by death, but they only want life in prison only.
Well, the judge sort of said these charges can still stand, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to convict him on them. There's enough evidence to support the prosecution making these charges, but it doesn't mean I'm going to follow through and agree with them. The Freedom to Work organization, which is the force behind the Employment Non-Discrimination Act and trying to get that passed, says the White House has barred the Labor Department from protecting transgender workers at federal contractors with the EEOC decisions that said that discrimination is barred by Title VII.
Because it's sex discrimination.
Yes, and so Freedom to Work is charging the White House with standing in the way of labor implementing those EEOC decisions.
Come on, White House.
Meanwhile, Freedom to Work and other LGBT groups were a major presence at the conference of the National Council of La Raza that got a lot of publicity for Michelle Obama being there, but they had a lot of meetings with the La Raza officials to create combined coalitions for ENDA and for immigration issues and all of that. So it's nice to see some coalition building.
Back to the
on.
White House for a second. You know that the Senate reached kind of a compromise over what do they call them? Executive branch nominees will be voted on. They didn't end the filibuster, but they agreed to that, but not for the judicial nominees. And William Thomas of Florida, who's black and gay, has had no hearing in 8 months, and neither Senators Nelson, who's a Democrat, nor Marco Rubio, Rubio, who's a Republican, will return the blue slips, and that's effectively putting his nomination on hold, even though they're the ones who recommended him.
Exactly. Rubio, you sort of understand where he's coming from. Nelson's another question.
We got a lot of violent stories. Should we get
yes,
into them?
we should go into them.
It's been a bad
Austin,
week.
Texas. Bar pickup guy murdered Daniel Villarreal. Suspect's picture has been published. Terrible story.
They met at Oil Can Harry's.
Yeah. And in Mounds View, Minnesota, another pickup guy stabbed his hookup date to death 51 times.
This was back on June 20th. He's been charged with second-degree murder. His name is Stephen Guler, 51, who says he blacked out and doesn't remember doing it.
Yes.
He fell from.
But he had a previous incident where he also blacked out after
that's
attacking
a problem.
someone.
He spent 18 months in prison for that. Yeah.
In Philadelphia, Charles Sargent has been arrested. He had sex with a transgender woman.
He was going out with, basically, or
Yeah.
having sex with, because he has a girlfriend as well.
Yes, who came home and found him cutting up the body.
Right. And he's saying he did this because he found out that the person he was fooling around with was transgendered.
But
he then threatened to harm the girlfriend and her kids if she told anybody.
But she called the cops.
She sure did.
And Charles Sargent has been arrested, and Diamond Williams was the unfortunate victim of this.
And in Babylon, Long Island, 4 young men from Oceanside have been arrested in the brutal anti-gay attack on Saturday night.
Of 2 men.
Right. One survivor has been released. The other is in serious condition. The suspects are all like 17 and 18, charged with gang assault and assaults as a hate crime. But the father of one of them told News 12 that they are good boys. And the other 2 started it. 4 against 2. The other 2 started it.
Always. I saw.
By what? Being gay?
Well, I saw a local news report on it. Evidently, these 4 attackers pulled up and asked these 2 guys for directions. And there must have been something they didn't like in their manner, and they proceeded to viciously attack them.
Right.
We should mention and mourn the death of Emil Griffith.
Hall of Fame boxer, and he was out, dead at 75 in New York. Of course, he's a great boxer, welterweight, most famous for killing Benny Paret in the ring in 1962, after Paret called him a maricon.
At the weigh-in.
Which is like calling him a faggot. And
it is calling him a faggot.
Well, okay. Well, I mean, there's equivalency. He acknowledged he was gay in a 2005 interview at Griffith, and later managed to get into a pride parade subsequently. But he was attacked coming out of a gay bar in 1992, and he suffered from dementia. He
was pretty well known, not publicly, but as gay, and that's why Benny Paret went after him at the weigh-in.
He was supposed to go on the David Susskind show with David Rothenberg in the 60s, but he, didn't show up.
But there was this attack. Now, there was a movie made about this called Ring of Fire, the Emil Griffith story, in 2005 by Dan Klors and Ron Berger. Really, really good documentary. Williamson Henderson of the Stonewall Veterans Association wrote a remembrance of him and said that Emil hung out at the Stonewall Bar a lot in those days. Williamson dated him. He was involved in the founding of the Stonewall Veterans Association.
You're gonna make me say something about Williamson Henderson, who himself has a checkered past, and I know he'll probably be writing me at this point, but I don't care.
Okay. Well, Emil Griffith was a fascinating guy and did talk more openly about his. He talked about an attraction to men and women, but the killing of Benny Paret in the ring was something he was, he got angry when he was called a maricon, but he regretted the death, certainly.
Sure, of course. Well, it's a brutal sport.
And just a quick thank you to the viewer in New Mexico who sent me a couple of newspaper articles, particularly about an airport shuttle driver who forced a same-sex couple who were holding hands to move to the back of the bus. Because he considered their behavior inappropriate.
Oh, wow.
Man, it's still, we tell you about triumphs, but there are bad things going on. All right, international news.
How about that
whether-
royal baby? That's the top of the news everywhere else. 83
Can't we leave it out?
83% of Britons say they would be very comfortable or comfortable if the baby is gay or bisexual.
Don't they already have a gay people in the family? Isn't Edward gay or something?
But he got married to a woman.
Yeah. All right, well, good. I hope they're all
So maybe
happy.
he's bisexual.
And let's look at other news. In Montenegro, they held their first Pride Parade, and 200 violent protesters showed up and attacked them. And the local activists are giving some credit to the cops for helping out and arresting some of the attackers. But it was a pretty ugly, violent scene.
In Mexico City, first of all, gays picketed the Russian embassy over the anti-gay laws.
Yep.
And they've also got their first out gay mayor. His name is Benjamin Medrano, a singer and bar owner in Fresnillo in the state of Zacatecas, which is a place plagued by drug violence. And they asked him if he was afraid, and he said, "Oh, I don't know any of these people."
He's a singer.
But he also said, "I'm not going to paint City Hall pink."
Or support same-sex marriage
Uh-oh.
because I am a faithful Catholic.
Well, who needs them?
Well, let's go through this Russian stuff because this is really heating up. This, 4 Dutch visitors got arrested in Murmansk for gay propaganda.
They were at a human rights seminar in which they were asked to participate, and they're doing a film documenting gay life in Russia, and they were fined 3,000 rubles, which is $93 apiece.
They have been released, but this is, we're getting a little dribs and drabs of what's coming up after passing this Don't Say Gay law.
Well, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church says same-sex marriage is a sign of the coming of the apocalypse, in case you didn't know and you want to get ready.
Yeah, but good news for the moment from St. Petersburg, where a Russian court threw out the arrests that happened at St. Petersburg Pride.
Well, this is a regional court,
Yes.
which is overruling,
Yes, and may get overruled itself. But they arrested all the LGBT activists at Pride, everyone who marched. And
60 of them, I think.
A few of the attackers, but not a lot. But this was the one where Nikolai Alexeyev got punched.
Well,
we showed you that picture.
The judge, I don't know if it's a man or woman, said that they were just exercising their right to assembly. Imagine
Do they have that in Russia?
Well, we don't have much of it in New York, by the way.
I actually liked Harvey Firestein's op-ed in the New York Times on this. He wrote an op-ed. We told you last week that he had written a note on his Facebook page or something saying we have to do something about this law. But he made an analogy that is usually considered a little dicey, but I thought was interesting in this case. He said, everybody talks about how in 1936, when the Nazis were coming to power, they held the Olympics in Berlin, and it was a great triumph because Jesse Owens, who was anathema to the Nazis, had all these big wins. And it
didn't bother Hitler at all. He thought Jesse Owens was an animal because he was black, and he only worried about, and he kept a Jew. Americans kept a Jew out of the race at one point to appease Hitler.
Well, what Harvey pointed out was that for all our talk about moral victories at the 1936 Olympics and not boycotting, what did it do? It didn't stop World War II. It didn't stop the murder of 6 million Jews. It didn't stop Hitler. It didn't do anything. And that we may not be quite at that point with Russia, but we cannot say, oh, the Olympics can go on without any problem. We have to start standing up all over the world and objecting to this.
And there is a great debate in the community about boycotting. Some people saying it's not about politics, but shoot, I mean, it's dangerous. As I say, I hope somebody is planning on holding a rainbow flag in the Parade of Nations.
Or there's talk of boycotting the opening ceremonies. There's talk of displaying the rainbow flag in various ways. All this sympathy for the athletes. They've trained so hard. Well, so what? That's not, how important is that in the face of what the Russian government is doing to come down on people?
Right.
So all of this is beginning to play out. There's a revival of a little Queer Nation group here in New York calling for a boycott of Russian vodka. Probably will do a few little actions, ask bars everywhere to stop selling Russian vodka.
The last boycott of Russian vodka, I remember, was when they got involved in the Afghan war.
Yes. Well, we're hoping to do something, but this has got to grow. It's got to get bigger, and people have got to start paying attention.
A horrible
to this.
story out of Jamaica where a cross-dressing teen, 17, Dwayne Jones is the given name, murdered near the resort city of Montego Bay. He was discovered while he was at a party, or she, I mean, whatever. I mean,
we don't know.
We don't know how Dwayne identifies.
Exactly.
But was cross-dressing and was discovered to be a boy and was stabbed to death by the other partygoers.
And shot, too.
Awful.
And in Greece, the health minister wants to reinstate a law that allows cops to arrest and forcibly test for HIV anyone they suspect of having HIV.
Not going to make me want to go.
And he also wants landlords to then evict anyone who tests positive. And publicize the names, and all of this is an hysteria based around the economic turmoil in Greece.
As is what Putin is doing in Russia.
Yes.
But they keep saying in Russia there are other people who have other views, but they don't. This was a unanimous vote in the Duma.
Yeah.
All the parties supported the anti-gay law.
Yeah.
In Haiti, 2 days after watchdog groups condemned the increased violence against gay people, 1,000 people rallied against homosexuality, led by religious groups.
Yeah.
Charming.
We told you last week about the awful murder of a gay activist in Cameroon. African and British activists demonstrated at the Cameroon embassy in London this week. And LGBT activists in Cameroon have suspended their AIDS education programs because they are afraid of identifying themselves. They're asking for better security before they continue this. They say the climate of homophobia has intensified geometrically.
Well, they're trying to help things in Ireland. They have published the Gender Recognition Bill to recognize transitioning and allow transgender people to apply for new birth certificates. It's estimated that 200 people at the moment are awaiting this service.
But you have to be at least 18 and you have to be single to
really?
apply for gender reassignment recognition.
Well.
Annoying.
New book about Igor Stravinsky says he was ambisexual at the time that he wrote Petrushka and the Rite of Spring. It's written by a confidant and close collaborator with him, Robert Kraft, but some of the other biographers say no.
Very controversial.
Yes.
A lot of anger around it, too.
But anything to upset Putin.
Yeah. And the House of Lords in Britain has changed its mind about Alan Turing. They now want him pardoned.
Alan Turing is the code breaker, the guy who broke the code in World War II because he's a big computer genius, father of the computer in many ways, or parent, or whatever. And he was they apologized for persecuting him for homosexuality, and under Gordon Brown, but he said, well, I'm not going to go back and pardon everybody. He was convicted under a law that was at the time, but now they're looking to do that.
Whatever makes them happy. They're going back a little in time at the Vatican. The new Pope put in place a new banker.
Monsignor Battista Ricca.
This has been the source of a lot of scandal because there's a lot of money laundering, evidently, through the Vatican Bank because their records are not too pristine.
They're in boxes.
So they have this new guy, and there are some people who oppose him, so they've dug up some of his history.
Says he was stuck in a lift or an elevator with a rent boy.
In 1999.
And there's also a report that he took a diplomatic post in Uruguay in 1999 and moved in with his lover, Patrick Hari, a Swiss Army captain, who was forced out in 2001 by the Polish nuncio. I don't know how,
so people are after this guy. Be nice if they went after some of the actual predators.
Vatican is saying the claims against him are not credible.
But meanwhile, the Pope is in Brazil, where he's very, very, very popular.
Including with the gays who greeted him with protests.
Well, they greeted him with a kiss in, and they flew a few rainbow flags.
He might have liked that.
And if you wonder what the right wing is up to since they're losing in this country, as we have said many times here, they are going out around the world to try to encircle us and then come back.
Well, Christians have always been doing that, haven't they?
Well, watch out for the Thomas Street Coffee Company, now operating in Uganda, New Guinea, Indonesia, Ethiopia, and Honduras because they are a business of the American Family Association.
Oh. But
AIDS
is the
news.
coffee any good?
I'll leave it to you to figure
All right.
out.
I don't drink coffee.
I do.
Tea. All right. Okay.
AIDS news.
Well, throat cancer is caused by oral sex, right? New study found that women who get the HPV vaccine are protected, and presumably men would be too. 70% of these cancers are caused by viruses, up from 16% in the 1980s. And they said it provides 93% protection versus the two types of human papillomavirus. It's a powerful vaccine. Study was released, done almost 6,000 women in Costa Rica. That's where they did it. Oral cancer from oral sex occurs at the base of the tongue or deep in the folds of the tonsils. It's hard to detect, more common among heterosexual men because vaginal fluids contain more virus than the surface of the penis. But it only works if you're vaccinated before you get the infection.
HPV, yeah.
So line up and get it if you could benefit from it.
And sometimes HPV clears itself. But,
Well, I mean, now that they know that heterosexual men are more affected, they're probably going to make it a sacrament, don't you think?
Well, that's what Gloria Steinem used to say about abortion.
Yes.
Good news from, of all places, the U.S. Congress, where the House Appropriations Committee has accepted an amendment on a funding bill directing the Department of Justice to assess the HIV criminalization laws and recommend updates to them.
What's going on?
Well, someone went and testified to the President's AIDS Commission and said, you know, these laws are screwed up. And that actually had an effect, and Barbara Lee, Congresswoman, was able to put in this amendment and get it accepted. It doesn't mean it's going anywhere or they'll do anything, but it's a good move.
So what are the candidates for mayor of New York saying about AIDS at the GMHC forum?
This week, the Gay Men's Health Crisis was able to sponsor a mayoral candidates forum on HIV and AIDS issues, and all the Democratic candidates showed up, except Chris Quinn, who was at the bedside of her father, who's hospitalized. But everyone else showed up. Now, the fun thing was that this was exactly when the Anthony Weiner story was breaking, and he was holding his press conference in another room at GMHC and then came to the forum, not all that late. I have to say that it was predictable. There was no real news broken. All of them were basically in the right place. There weren't many questions asked because there are so many candidates. They were asked about whether the appointment process to the HIV Planning Council, whether it should be more transparent, whether these candidates would do differently than Mayor Bloomberg has on funding for prevention and services, whether the HASA, the Housing and Aid Services Administration, policies should be liberalized, and the 30% rent cap, and everybody's in favor of all this stuff, and everybody's on
Quinn
board.
is not in favor of HASA for all.
Well, there are some nuances here, and she wasn't there, but basically everybody was on the right page. And one of the most interesting questions was, who do you know with HIV and AIDS, and what has been your personal experience with it? And most of them talked about, I know Tom Duane, or I know Dennis DeLeon, and but Adolfo Carrion talked about having a cousin who had died of AIDS, who he'd grown up with.
He's an independent candidate.
And he was quite moving on that. And John Liu talked about a guy who had come to his college to speak and was a mentor to a lot of people, and who he saw later and had developed AIDS and was sick, and he became close to him, so that was a little more moving. I was disappointed that the questions weren't more sophisticated, and there was no talk of prevention. That's a big issue now. There was a demonstration at Mount Sinai last week by ACT UP over the fact that people don't know about pre- or post-exposure prophylaxis, prevention of getting infected either before or after you have a risky experience. People are going to hospitals and asking for this and being told there's no such thing, go away. That's why there was the demo at Mount Sinai.
And if you need to take post-exposure prophylaxis, folks, you need to get it within basically 48 hours, up to 72 hours.
And it's a 1-month course of treatment, but the
And
New York,
it's expensive.
the New
Well,
York State,
$600.
New York State Department of Health has put out new guidelines for post-exposure prophylaxis. Better, milder drugs, so it's not as many side effects. And told you when you can test for the presence of the virus so that you can get off these drugs sooner.
And this is when you have like a broken condom, or if you are raped, or if you have a needle stick in a hospital, those kinds of
Or if
things.
you have unprotected sex
Right.
with someone who might be HIV positive. Whatever your risk, you should certainly be looking into post-exposure prophylaxis. And I should have given this to the control room, but here's a website you can go to, PEP411.com, PEP411.com, information about post-exposure prophylaxis. They have videos that explain it. They have a lot of question and answers. It's really comprehensive.
And especially if you work in an emergency room, we hope you'll acquaint yourself with this.
Oh my God. We need a public information campaign.
Yep,
we need
we do.
subways, buses,
We're doing it right now.
schools, post-exposure prophylaxis. All right.
Okay.
Entertainment news.
Well, we told you about the controversy over Ender's Game, the new movie that's coming out because it was written by, the book was written by Orson Scott Card, who's very anti-gay.
Yeah.
And so they had
That will be profiting.
Exactly. So they had the Comic-Con convention. The director of the film said, the theme is about tolerance and empathy. And then I found that the author to be very intolerant. Where did all the empathy go? The star, Harrison Ford, said Orson Scott Card's anti-gay views are not in the story. He says, I think he has a right to his opinion. Oh, really? I mean, that's a brilliant statement. And I think it was a battle he fought and lost on marriage and would like to get on with the rest of his life.
And get all those profits and give them to the right-wing organizations he supports, like the National Organization for Marriage.
I had written something similar, but I accept your interpretation.
We're running out of time.
Yes.
Congratulations to Jesse Tyler Ferguson and his husband. They got married in Soho last weekend. Congratulations to Mike Signorelli and his new husband,
We got a
David
picture.
Gerstner. We have a picture of them. They got married.
There they are.
last
That's
week.
Mike on the right,
Yep,
David on the left.
Then the picture of City Hall in the back because they got married at City Hall.
Right.
And that's what they do in the Marriage Bureau. And Mike has a new gig at SiriusXM Radio.
Yep.
He's no longer on the gay channel. He's now on what they call SiriusXM Progress, Monday through Friday.
That's to talk about more issues.
3 to 6
Although we
p.m.
certainly talk about a lot of issues on this show. And I want to recommend a new show, one-man show called Handbook for an American Revolutionary, starring Matthew Lee Earlback, through August 3rd at the Judson Memorial Church's gym, directed by the great Tony Speciale. He personifies Americans from right to left and men to women, because there's a transgender character. And everyone is sort of portrayed with sympathy and great verve, and it's a kind of a good meditation on where we are in America in 2013. There he is. Matthew Lee Earlback.
And you better hurry down to the Splash Bar because it's closing August 10th after a 22-year run.
Oh.
They say New York City nightlife is going to hell in a handbasket.
And Nate Silver, who is out gay, who did the election predictions for New York Times and predicted all 50 states, is moving to ESPN, where he will have a wide-ranging portfolio, including contributing to a new show that Keith Olbermann is doing soon.
That'll be quite a team.
And probably to ABC News on the elections.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought of that because he's done sports stuff before. That's what
He
he
likes
came
sports.
From. Yeah. And you like stuff, and you're going away for a couple of weeks.
I am.
And Chris Cooper will be sitting in here in your place.
Thanks, Chris.
But you'll be back.
I will be back.
Unlike the Splash Bar.
Yeah, well, by the, we hope.
Yes. And we'll be back with this show every week. So we'll see you next week.
Take care.
Bye.